Hello and welcome to this episode of Kaleidoscope the podcast. My guest today is Debbie Pailu, but I think it's actually Debbie Anderson. Debbie, you're most welcome.
Hi.
Thank you for coming along and sharing your time and your story with us. As you're aware, the four questions are: what was life like before the change? What was life like during the change? What was life like after the change? And what does the future hold? Not that any of us have a crystal ball, but as far as we know, we would plan, we would like. So I'm just going to pass it to you, Debbie, for you to tell us your story.
Okay, so this is going to be kind of like a summarized version, I suppose, of how I guess it's kind of like the journey that I went on in order to end up as a working holistic therapist, So before uh before that happened, I was kind of planning to go to the art college. There was a couple of plans that I had in mind for my life and for myself. Um, Very happy-go-lucky, just kind of going with it. Um, an event happened whenever I was studying for my A levels, which resulted in me being diagnosed with PTSD. So basically wrong place, wrong time, and I was involved in I was held up as part of a robbery scenario, so the whole thing ended up going to the serious crime unit. Um, it had a massive impact on me. So throughout that change, even though maybe at the time I wasn't aware that things were changing, I went on a sort of a self-healing journey, and that is what really drew me towards therapies because I would have personally probably been quite skeptical or just young, 18, 19, didn't know much about them. But whenever I discovered them, that's kind of whenever I would say a deeper healing started to take place. So before the change, my personality a little bit different, I would say, during the change, very much up, down, all over the show. Things like insomnia, um, you know, just all your typical examples of moving through trauma, really. Trauma responses would have been quite normal, but I wouldn't have thought of them as being those at the time. And yeah, I guess reflecting back now, I can definitely see that there was a lot of changes going on in and around that time for me. I'm not gonna claim that I am a fully healed person because I think that's a very high bar to set for yourself. And we don't want to be sort of going around in denial about certain things, but the before and after is a lot different. I'm 41 now, and looking back at myself as a young person, I would just be wanting to give so much advice, because I feel that I've kind of learned through experience now what works, what doesn't work. And I would be a lot more progressed than I would have been then, certainly. Um, and I think I would be very similar to lots of people that have gone through their own self-healing journeys. You feel like authentic empathy towards people. You can relate to more of a variety of issues with people, especially if you're in that sort of healing type atmosphere. You can almost tune in to what the person is trying to tell you straight away. And that I suppose you've learned that the hard way, I guess, is a way of looking at it, but you know exactly what they're talking about when they're telling you about certain experiences. That's what I find anyway. So in a strange way, it's actually really helped me with the work that I'm familiar with now. Do you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully that makes sense, you know. And I think it's quite a similar story for people that have gone through certain things, you know, what way you come out the other side is very much dependent on your personality traits, who you are, you know, um, and what you want for yourself as well. So it's all about your intentions, what you're sort of putting out there. And I was always in that frame of mind. I want to feel better about this. I don't want to feel worse. So maybe that was just luck of the draw, really, but that's that's kind of the way that I kept pushing forward, I think, through things, you know.
Grand, thank you. So, pardon me, you said you were planning on going to art college whenever this happened. You were doing your A levels. Did you go to art
Yeah.
college?
I did. I enrolled, I got in, and I made a really good start. And then, unfortunately, some sort of trauma slash PTSD type issues were coming up for me. At the time, I couldn't really understand what was going on, but I went to Belfast Art College. So I was walking through Belfast with my art folder regularly, and I was going into fashion and textiles classes. So environments where lots of sewing machines would have been going at the one time, for example. And what I found was I couldn't have anyone working behind me, which sounds crazy, but it was
No.
that noise and the vibration type from behind me. So I think the teachers began to kind of look at me a wee bit like, is there something really wrong with her? Do you know, because I kept making these mad requests, like, can I work in the back corner of the room? Which now, as me being me now, I would have twigged on that, okay, I need to sit and have a chat with this girl and see what's going on. But nobody ever really did, to be honest. And I would have been maybe a little closed off as well. So I was keeping little bits to myself. I didn't want all my classmates to know the full details. So there was that wee bit of perhaps shame there as well, which was misplaced. But I didn't understand what I was trying to carry at the time. I just knew that I felt uncomfortable and there was too much noise and too much sort of happening around me. So any classes where it was all color theory and sitting painting quietly or sitting drawing, doing drawings, 100%. Anything that was a lot of activity, scissors, noise, machines, I couldn't, I just couldn't cope with it. So then my marks began to reflect that. And unfortunately, it was very sudden. I was actually doing, I was sitting drawing in botanic gardens because you have to go outside the college to do very random sort of things like that. And I was drawing plants, and one of the tutors said something to me about that not being right or not being, was like a wee switch just went click, and I thought, I don't know if I can cope with this. I didn't see it working. And I felt, now that's probably trauma response too. I thought as soon as I leave this class, I'm not coming back here. And that was it. I just dropped out, which is quite sad now that I look back and I think, oh, there was so much that I could have tapped into there if I maybe got a bit more help, a bit more, if there was a bit more awareness about PTSD, what it is. And I have to be honest, if as soon as I heard that, I felt, no, 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 sure, that's what soldiers have. That's what the police have.
Yeah,
That's contained to a very special group of people, and that couldn't possibly be me.
yeah,
And it's that kind of like that dawning realization maybe took a long time for me, when I actually thought about it. I thought, well, probably was, but I just didn't really want to go there at the time as well. So I just kind of, I knew I had to do something. So I ended up pushing myself maybe through things like retail management, and I was working away. But I started to seek out alternative therapies for myself. And then I thought there's really something really interesting here. So I did energy work with a private tutor, and that kind of snowballed then. I was living not too far from Lisburn Tech. So I did reflexology, aromatherapy, Indian head massage. It just kind of kept going then. And then after a while, I just thought, well, this is my thing now, you know. So, but yeah, I always do wonder about the art college, and I would still be quite artsy, creative, and I like having drawing pads and different things. With my
And
family
do you?
life, it's rare that I get time, but I do,
I
yeah, I do,
that will come back. That will come
yeah,
back.
yeah,
Um, so you'd said about some of your trauma responses being insomnia, and
yeah,
their responses. The noise one, very, very common for people with PTSD. And this is for you being 41 now,
yeah,
you would have thought tutors, etc., would have recognized some of those symptoms from us coming out of 40 years of conflict. They would have recognized some of
yeah,
what was going on for you. It's
yeah,
just a pity they didn't, because particularly with the art therapy, you know,
yeah,
you would, in my brain, that would have been a natural, let's get this girl into art therapy because that's going to work for
yeah,
whatever has happened. And the thing is,
yeah,
your tutors didn't need to know what happened. They just needed to know that you were struggling
hmm,
emotionally with whatever had happened to you.
yeah.
Um, but what were some of the, bar the noise and the insomnia, what were some of the other trauma responses that you were experiencing?
I would say things like maybe being put off. I think when you've got lots of adrenaline going, sometimes it can sort of put you off your food. So I would say, and normally I loved my food, but I think the sleep connected in with the eating habits would have led me to feel maybe a little bit burnt out quicker, than most other people. And every so often, then I would have had to think, right, nutrition, you need to engage with it properly. I think bad habits can kick in when you're just feeling that bit low anyway. Um, and other trauma responses, maybe from time to time, being quite, and I would still be a wee bit like this. I think it might just be part of my personality that was amplified, but sometimes just being like time on my own, I really value that. But I think especially if you've gone through something, it's almost like necessary. You need to have little chunks of time to yourself. I find it relaxing, but apparently it can be a knock-on effect. Some people do feel that they need more time alone.
And there is that thing as well of needing to recharge, and the best place
Yeah.
to recharge is in nature on our own.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, that could have been just your body. I fully believe our bodies know what we need and are
Hmm.
trying to give it to us, but we don't always listen. And
Yes.
sometimes our programming, our human type programming, takes over. Our brain
Yeah.
type programming takes over.
Yeah.
Um, if we were to listen to our bodies more, we would maybe be out in nature on our own
Yeah.
recharging that and healing, letting nature
Yes.
heal us.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, so you still doing energy work, aromatherapy, and then head massage.
Yeah.
Have you thought about doing art therapy?
It's not something I've ever looked at properly, Valerie, but I would say, yeah, because I can connect those dots. As soon as you pick up a pad with a couple of pencils, pastels, whatever, even a pen, a biro pen, you can be doodling away, and it definitely does help, I think, with feelings of calm. You know, Anything creative that works a slightly different part of your brain than the everyday walking around Tesco's and doing this and that, you're definitely releasing something, you know, and it can give you more vivid dreams, you know. It kind of unlocks different levels of you, I think, is a good way to think of it, you know. Um, I have quite a busy family life. I have a teenager, I've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year old. So it's actually come up recently. I've thought, I really want to get him doing maybe handprints or, different things. So it'll be nice to see maybe a few things sitting out on the table. And even with my regular type work, because I've had an awful lot of like maternity sort of chunks of time, it's very much part-time at the minute, you know. But
Oh,
it's something
with a 1 year old boy.
I think it's something I'll always have somewhere in the background. I get a lot from it as well, which I think it is important in your work. But yes, you're absolutely right. The art therapy would be a good match, probably, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it would.
So what happened to your relationships at that time with you? Did your
Yeah,
relationships with your parents deteriorate,
yeah,
or did they realize, because I assume they knew what you'd been
yeah,
through? And so
yes.
did they realize and support you, or did the relationships struggle, or
I would say, well, okay, so they were fully aware of everything. Um, and they were contacted, as soon as the robbery took place and arrived, so there was that almost immediate connection there. Um, I think everybody went through their own version of kind of, oh my goodness, what on earth happened? What was that? So yeah, I suppose they've had to navigate their own journey through that. I'm an only child, so I'm sure that was quite difficult, you know.
yeah,
I would say at the time I was the best person in the world at I'm fine. I'm fine. No, no, I'm fine. You don't need to worry about me. I'm fine. That type of that was me trying to contain everything, I suppose, for a while. I was in a relationship with an ex-boyfriend. That's who I was with when this happened, when the event happened. And unfortunately we didn't last much longer, beyond that. Um, it had a huge. On him. He is probably still quite a sensitive person. We haven't spoken in years, since that pretty much. We're sort of in the few weeks beyond that. But yeah, I would say it had a lasting impact on. Him too. Uh, he's got his own life.
yeah, yeah.
Even down to a private life. I'm not going to say who it is or
No, no,
anything,
no, absolutely, no, no, no.
but
But
he's yeah.
yeah,
I know that his life has progressed, sort of in a good way for him.
I think what I'm trying to establish for the listeners is that one incident can have such a huge ripple effect
Oh yeah,
on all parts of your life, so that you
yeah,
lost your, and the things the listeners aren't getting is that you and I've had a conversation, a more in-depth conversation
Yeah.
about what happened.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to reveal people's
Yeah.
names or make
Yes.
other people
Yeah. Yeah.
vulnerable. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But it's more the fact that it wasn't just college that was affected. So,
Oh, yeah.
and for
Yeah.
me, that's the
Yeah.
thing is when you look at that happy-go-lucky child who was a child, teenager,
Yes.
my
Yeah.
age, 18's a child, um, about to go off to college and just start living life and had the relationships
Yes. Oh,
and
yeah. Yeah.
there's nothing to
Yeah.
say that you'd have stayed with him and had
Yeah. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
long-term relationship or married
Yeah.
or we don't know, but the potential of what that could have been was taken off you by other
Yes.
people's.
Yeah. And
Um,
also, I would say my ability to relate to certain people, especially people of my own age at the time, was
yeah,
definitely affected because there was still loads of people around me. If you can imagine, like it's not a very nice way of maybe saying it, but some people are, oh my goodness, I broke a nail, and some people are a lot more robust, you know.
yeah,
So there was certain personality types that were maybe around me or in my life that I had to kind of like I don't relate to this person in any way now because I've gone through something quite deep and they're just not gonna get it. They're never gonna get it. So yeah, I think there definitely were relationships that just kind of fizzled or went cold because I was trying to maybe talk to them and I just felt like it was kind of just wee everyday silly things that I was getting in response, and I thought,
yeah.
oh no,
And in a way, then your innocence had been taken.
yes, oh yeah,
Because at 18, you should be worrying about what you're going to do in college, or if you're going to college or not, or what your
yeah,
boyfriend said at the weekend, and the fact that your nail broke. That is what you should
yeah,
be worrying about.
exactly, exactly.
And so your innocence
Um,
was taken.
yeah. And part of the actual incident itself involved now we have no idea whether this weapon was actually functional. We don't know if it was loaded with anything. We don't know. But because as I said it was a robbery type scenario, there was a little bit of fear was trying to be sort of induced to get a result quicker, I think. And there was a gun held to me, and I was threatened, you know. Um, my ex was trying to protect me in that moment and trying to sort of wriggle themselves so that they would be in a position to be covering me. So lots of various things happened, but the result was we were both face down on a bed and I could see feet moving. So we were tied basically. So I had my belt removed and either my hands or feet tied with that. And then ties and things were hauled out of a wardrobe. So I had that wee moment where I said goodbye for that wee split second because I didn't know in that moment exactly what was going to come next. So that was quite an experience. Now, a little singular moment like that can have a huge impact on the way you think, on the things that you become interested in, the things that you lose interest in. It's almost like a total reset, is how I think of it now. But I have gone to counseling sessions over the years, just at different times, really. And one person was able to kind of describe it in a way that made sense to me, which was that feeling of being lifted was kind of like a disassociation type thing, you would call that now. But at the time, so if you imagine like place crawling with police, there's lots of activity going on. This is maybe hours after that happening. I still had that kind of like floaty. There was still that floatiness there. And the fact that it has never actually been resolved, you know, we still don't really know what uh I mean we heard bits of information, but it all had to be put in a box with just a question mark on it. For me personally, I had to just move it out of the road, you know. So yeah, hopefully that wasn't too rambling there. But
No,
that feeling of having gone through that and having that floatiness and having to sort of like reintegrate yourself into something that definitely changes and you definitely become, well, for me, my experience was I look at certain things as a certain way now. At the time, because I was sort of like healing, I had to put things very much in a yes, no. Yes, I can deal with this and I want to talk to this person, or no, this isn't helping me. I can't deal with them right now, you know. So maybe quite an extreme type reaction, I suppose, which softened over time, you know. So
and when you tell that story, then it's very, we can see absolutely. I can understand why you
yeah,
couldn't have anything behind you with noise because you
yes,
didn't know what they were doing. You couldn't see
yeah,
them. Although they were above you, it was kind of behind you because you were lying
yes,
on your front.
yeah,
Um, and whatever they were doing, you didn't know what was coming next, whether it was your hands being tied or
yeah,
whatever. And of
yeah,
course, with us living in Northern Ireland, it's not, I don't suppose it's really any different anywhere in the world.
yeah, yeah,
I think guns are readily available, but when you live in Northern Ireland,
yeah.
they're readily available and therefore
Hmm.
you wouldn't question whether it's real or not. You
Yes,
would assume that it is.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so Debbie, what does the future hold?
Well, I would say, despite all of that happening years and years ago, I would still be quite a determined person, you know. Um, it might be quite like a weird way to say something, but I am determined to live my life and be as happy as I can possibly be, you know. I know that sounds so maybe a rare thing to say, but
No, not at all.
you have to grab your life. You have to grab it and shake it and get as much as you can out of it without stepping on anyone else or you know what I mean. So yeah, that's really it. And it's whatever that looks like. But I really enjoy time with my family. I enjoy sort of traveling about the place within reason with young kids, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I love my food now and get good enjoyment, I suppose, out of mundane, everyday type stuff. You know, I like cooking. I enjoy um, focusing on the future, probably things like eventually a house move, I've got certain things that I would like in order to be comfortable. So it's just working towards those things, really.
Very
Grounded,
good.
very grounded type aims, which, yeah,
Grounded aims are not a bad thing.
yeah,
I think the more grounded we all could be, the better if but
yeah.
that's coming from a
And
trauma-informed
maybe
background as
art
well.
therapy, maybe art therapy, you never know.
I
Yeah.
just think if it's something that you
Yeah,
still love, but
yeah,
then sometimes the thing you love you don't want to share with other people in that way. It's your thing. So
yeah,
I just wondered.
yeah.
Um, So our three little questions to finish off with, your favorite
Yes.
phrase, your favorite book, or your favorite, or what you would tell your younger self. You can answer all three or one of the three, whatever works for you.
Okay, so yes, I did have a think about the book one. So my taste in books is so varied. Really, there's a bit of everything, and I mean everything in there. Um, and strangely, despite all that, I do love a good crime sort of drama type book, a real
But you're
page
used to
turner.
trauma. That's
Yeah,
not strange at all. It's when you look at it,
yeah,
if you are
yeah,
used to that level of adrenaline because of trauma, you are
yeah,
drawn because your body thinks that's
yeah,
normal.
yes. Well, there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
Uh, but I would read a lot of kind of alternative history type books as well. So one that I have found recently, and I've actually set it in the bedside drawer, is Chariots of the Gods by Eric von Daniken. So lots of people can offer you a really varied perspective just on the world, which I'm quite into investigating and having a look at.
Brilliant. And that's all that reframing and who's telling the history.
Yes,
Do you
totally,
know?
totally. Yeah, yeah.
Um, Fabulous. Favorite phrase, if you have one?
Favorite phrase, yeah, would probably be so one that kind of looks at what's a self-empowerment type vibe. I think this one, we are stars wrapped in skin. The light you are seeking has always been within. That's a good one, isn't
Very
it?
good. Very
That's a
good.
good
Yeah,
one. I
that's
like
lovely.
that one. Yeah.
Um, and what would you tell your younger self?
Oh my
You don't
goodness.
have, again, you don't have to answer. These are optionals.
Ah, just be good to yourself, look after yourself, and travel as much as you can, you know?
Very good. Very
Yeah.
good. Deborah, thank you very, very much for your time. Really
You're very
appreciate it and
welcome.
really appreciate being so vulnerable and telling us your story.
Yeah.
Um, I wish you continued good luck, good success, good
Thank
health
you. Thank you.
um,
Yes.
with your life and your business. Um, you'll send me your socials and we'll put them, I say below, but sometimes they end up above or beside, but
Sure.
we will put your details on the podcast anyway in case anybody wants to get in touch for because I think you're right. Sometimes when somebody has walked before us, it is much easier to go to them knowing I don't have to tell them everything because they kind of, if I say I was floating, she's going to get it. She's going to know what without me having to really
Yes.
discuss it.
Yeah.
Um, thank you very much for being with us.
You're very welcome. It was lovely talking to you. Thank you.